they can.
And I don't know if I'm recording to the Zoom cloud, but Jenna will teach me all this. We are recording now. So welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time on this busy work from home day, work from home season. A lot's been happening. It's been a breakneck pace, and I think we're all ready for this, believe it or not. I mean, the teachers are all engaged. Parents are appreciative of us reaching out. And I think we don't have answers to everything, but I do think we're thinking about all the angles as much as we can. So I wanted to start with just the basic outline of the status and where we are, and then answer any questions about that before we talk about what our plan is. And like I said, over the email, it's going to be all oral reporting, and then I'll follow up with documentation, and Margaret and I will do that starting tomorrow. We've been writing a lot of plans, but nothing coherent yet as organized, although we have 1 million spreadsheets and people are already filling them out. So school closure status. As you probably know, the DOE closed schools. Laura, of course, you're in the middle of that, Sunday night, and they have put up about a month as a minimum time, so to resume April 20th. We're going to conform with that. Our initial language was likely at least 2 weeks.
Yes.
Some of the schools, oh, hey, Pete.
How you doing? Took a little while to download, but
It took his wife.
Thank you, Virginia. It took at least, I'm sorry, it was going to be at least 2 weeks, and many of the schools were only going to close for 1 week. We heard one of the charters on Friday already closed through April break, which is the 20th, and we thought, wow, that's far out, but it may end up being very short.
Yeah.
I want to just give a brief overview of what the state is saying. So we had a really helpful conference call last night with State Education Department and our authorizer. Also spoken to the authorizer over the phone. The tone of things is we know that nothing is going to be able to replace classroom instruction. We know that no school is going to be able to replicate what they do with remote learning. And we also, and the authorizer is trusting that schools are going to make every effort to support and reach out to families. And they're basically saying, as far as mandates go, as far as requirements go, your best faith effort is good enough. They don't have any guidance to issue. They don't have any, of course they're going to be coming up with documentation and plans, but keep track of what you do, engage your families, keep the blood flowing so that when education resumes and school comes back, you can hit the ground running and not lose any ground. They're not expecting schools to replace classroom instruction with remote learning. But that doesn't mean that we're going to do everything we can to get as much information to families, support to families, and a virtual version of classroom instruction out. So that's our like kind of framework that we're working with right now. We don't have any idea about funding. We don't have any idea about accountability. We don't know if state tests are happening. We don't know if school's going to be happening during state tests. And basically, we have to not care about those things right now. I mean, we obviously are making plans and contingencies, and we can't run out of money, but the budget is in good shape. I do believe the authorizers are sensitive to where we are as a sector, and they're not going to remove per pupil funding just because school's closed. The last thing I'll say about this is the state has suspended some of the requirements. The 180 days of seat time are suspended. They're clear that home instruction does not count for seat time anyway. So we can't make up that ground with however good our plans are. And some of the accountability measures are also not going to happen. Like, for example, we had big talk about chronic absenteeism at the last board meeting, Well, the federal DOE announced that any state that has chronic absenteeism in its ESSA guidelines can skip a year this year because of that.
Do we know anything about funding for special needs kids?
Think about that yet. That was one of the hottest questions in the forum last night, and they had no answers.
Yeah. So there's an online.
Excuse me just a second. That's federal money?
No, it's state. That's state money.
Okay.
That is something that we're going to be in close touch with them. There's an online forum that NYSED has set up, and the New York City Charter Center through the collaborative are taking questions. What we did just find out as early as this morning is that the Department of Ed and I guess the state has cleared approval for teleconferencing for services. So that and that related service providers can do individual services through teleconferencing. So that gives me hope that means that the funding is still going to the service agencies, so that we can now but it depends on parent approval. So now we're going to have to work really closely as a school to figure out what does that mean in terms. Is it verbal approval? Is it email approval? Text approval? Obviously, people are not going to be signing documents at this point in person, and families probably have limited access to faxing and stuff. So we have to figure that out, and then we have to figure out how that's going to work for the providers and get them on a schedule and make sure that they're documenting really carefully.
Any other questions about anything I've said so far? Okay, so we broke up the discussion today, and the point of this meeting is to have discussion, get all the issues out, and then have a resolution about what our next steps are. We broke the discussion up into 3 areas: the instructional plan, sort of the tier 1, support for vulnerable populations, and other open questions that we haven't figured out yet. So the instructional plan. Wow, I mean, in 3 days, the whole sector has come up with these incredible remote learning plans. They're not complete yet for anybody, but the networks have put tons of energy into this, and so we've learned a little bit from them. Our team has been activated and is, people have time because they're home, has been compiling resources, and we've set up a Google site for our school that will be a hub starting next week for families, and teachers will be updating it every week or every day with lesson plans and resources. A lot of it is just you point and click, very simple. We are gonna,
the DOE website also has a bunch of resources broken down by grade level too.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I can forward that to you guys.
That would be great, because we can add it to what we have, which is about 50 or so websites that are supplemental and that teachers will curate and use and recommend to parents, and also can be just given to parents who can choose, to select things for their kids at certain times. We're trying to create a sense of structure. So there's a schedule for the day for kids. Obviously, families are going to vary in what they can interact with and what they can support, and we want to keep track of that.
I don't know who that person is. We can talk about that later.
So I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. The idea of the structure is we can't replicate the school day, but we can come as close as we possibly can to replicating the school day. Even things like morning meeting. I mean, we're not sure if we can get kids across the board on something like Zoom, but teachers are excited about the idea of using Zoom for morning meeting and doing all the same things: greeting, share, activity, message. You still have a sense of belonging. I can still say everyone's name every day and have them hear me say it as their teacher. All with the thought that when school resumes, we're hitting the ground running. But that we haven't rolled any of that out yet. That's all next week. This week is gathering information about what our families' needs are. It's keeping in contact with families, and it's setting up the routines and setting up the lines of communication. So every parent should have gotten a call or multiple calls yesterday, and if not today, from teachers, all their child's teachers, saying, checking in, how are you doing? Is everything okay? And they're documenting it on these locked spreadsheets where we're able to see as administration, where the hotspots are and where the needs are. Is everything okay? Number one. What do you need? Number two. And then what resources do you have, and what's the best way to reach you? We have family conferences scheduled for Thursday, report card conferences. We're pushing those to next week, but they'll be virtual. So rescheduling those as part of that. We'll also
Steve, for a second, when you get around to reading the results of these phone calls by the end of the week, from what you just said, can you send us some sort of alert as to what the problem areas are?
like a summary of the themes that emerge. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you right now what I've seen a couple of areas. We did a survey last week. We had small participation, maybe about 15% of our families responded, asking about digital access, anticipating this. We sent that out on Thursday. Most of the families who responded have either unlimited data and a device, or they have internet access at home. We don't know if they, necessarily all those have laptops or tablets they could use for this home instruction, but that was helpful to see. So the teachers are filling in the gaps too and asking, what are your devices? What are your tablets? What are your resources? And we're hearing, and we're trying to gather this today and move it forward, that Spectrum and maybe T-Mobile are offering free Wi-Fi access to families because of this issue. So we're trying to take up on that. And then the second thing is about devices. We're trying to understand the need. I understand the city has ordered 300,000 iPads to give out. So hopefully we can jump in on that. And if not, we have Chromebooks. We have a small number. We can distribute them. And we also will explore donations and putting our budget behind purchasing some Chromebooks that kids can use at home. So the two things, device and Wi-Fi access, are a big area of focus this week. That's technology needs in the sub-bullet on the agenda. And then uncovering all those needs and just connecting. A lot of the families responded saying they're really happy to hear from teachers, and they were appreciative of the call. And it was good to know that we'll be in touch. We're not just closing up shop and going away.
I have a call at 11 today to talk about the Wi-Fi issue, so I may hopefully have some news to share.
Okay, great. That's the instructional plan. I can describe the remote learning plan in more detail, but I think it's better to send some documents later in the week when they take shape.
Okay.
And especially with the Ed Committee, to see what we're doing.
Yes.
We were on the call last night and we were wondering, are we gonna feel like we're behind the curve and hearing all these schools and what they're doing? And the answer is no, we're right with the other charters. We're all like making this up as we go along and creating a pretty professional looking program, from scratch. Okay, so next thing is the support for vulnerable populations, and we have three categories here: food security, homelessness, and special needs. So regarding food security, Marie asked the question, are we spreading resources like the cafe that is offering free food to children? The DOE opening up all of its buildings because they closed school for grab and go is a game changer. So our families, originally we were worried that kids who lived far away couldn't come to the school to get food because the DOE was running its program and it's running its schools. But now if they live in the Bronx, they can go to the school nearby them in the Bronx to get a grab and go meal. So that solves most of the problem. There are family members who can't get out and go out. We've already heard that on the phone calls. So we're figuring out what resources we can connect them with. We have a couple of parents who have one parent who's elderly. We have a parent who's got a pre-existing health condition and is worried about going outside. So, no answers yet, but we have 3 social workers who are working on this issue and other support personnel who we can deploy because people's roles are very diminished in the support realm this week, not having kids on site. Next week, it'll ramp up some more as the plan takes shape. So that's the food security issue. Homelessness, we have, is it 15?
On record, yeah.
I thought it was more than that. We have 15 kids who are officially in shelters.
17. Sorry, it's 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe what the social workers are doing?
Sure. So there are 17 children who are homeless. I think about four. There are about 4 families out of those 17, so they're clustered. And what the social workers have been asked to do over these next 2 days is to make contact and gather very comprehensive data about what their needs are with the food insecurity, with stability in general, and also tech needs that they have. Our social workers each have a load of about 20 families that are the most at risk with their chronic attendance, and they've been tasked to call that every single one of those families as well, and to gather all of that same information. And also we have a couple of crisis cases at the school, just emergencies that have come up for children, and ACF cases, and they'll be in touch with all of those families as well this week and then ongoing. And based on what we dig up in terms of what the needs are, then we'll figure out a plan to mobilize and help any of the families who are most in need.
Do you know? Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Monica.
Hey. Do you know if you have any kids that are special needs as far as intellectual disabilities that have like care managers involved in their life? Because I know with us, we are supposed to still be reaching out to these kids. But would you guys know that? Would you have that information?
You mean special needs beyond their IEP needs?
Well, like if they are like OPWDD certified as far as their disability.
We don't have anybody in that category. No, we have a couple of kids with specific health needs.
Okay.
The student who has a catheter, the nurse is like, we're very focused on that, but that's, her family is obviously equipped to care without the nurse. But nobody in that category that's District 75, I think, is going to have a lot of those challenges.
Yeah. And from what I understand, there was just a Chalkbeat article that we can send around to the board as well, but there's some real concern about that because workers cannot enter the home at this time. So
right. That's
we were trying to figure out if paraprofessionals could continue and push into the home, and it based on willingness, but also if families request that, and it's absolutely forbidden, they can't.
Okay.
I think that same thing applies to children who even have more severe disabilities. I think parents are really concerned about what's going to happen now.
Yeah, that's our biggest concern right now.
Yeah. Yeah, people are literally on their own. So it's scary. It's scary, and it's changing day by day. I'm more worried about the adults than I am about our kids, because our kids are resilient, and they're going to be bored, but we'll keep them entertained, and we're going to get them resources. But adults who have serious health issues and who have a lot of needs for support, I'm more worried about them, and that's where I think our social workers can put their energy to. Marie asked a great question over email too, which is, what about supports when school resumes? And nobody has been thinking about that right now. We are just worried about tomorrow and Monday. We don't know when school's going to resume. That's the great unknown. But when we get there, when there's a little bit more of a time horizon, I don't know if additional mental health professionals is possible. I don't know if that's warranted. I mean, we're going to see, but we'll get a sense based on our interaction with the kids and the families. The idea this week is to touch base multiple times, and then through the lesson plans and the platform we're creating daily starting next week. So we'll get a lot of feedback about what kids' needs are, and caring for student social emotional needs while we're out of school is going to be a really important component of our plan. it's going to be crappy to be a kid and not have friends and not have your routine, not have your school and your teachers. So, I mean, there were kids crying on Friday at dismissal because they knew there was no school on Monday and it was so sudden. So we're focused on the here and now right now and on meeting mental health needs while they're remote. And that does get us to special education and multilingual learners. The news that broke this morning, I think this morning, that the city or the state will reimburse for telephone sessions for related services. So we now have a structure that we can follow. We were making all these cockamamie plans about deploying our related services people to go to homes and do home visits. And the Paris as well, like Margaret said, and the agency said, no, you can't go into anybody's home. I mean, it's our style is, maybe it's invasive, maybe it's unsafe, but we just go to the homes, We started out as a very small grassroots organization, so we would just invite ourselves over and have a chat on the couch, But those days, it seems like for this type of like massive need across the school and across the system is not appropriate. And maybe also because of safety and spreading viruses around. But so special education services will be provided over the phone to the extent we can coordinate with families. Multilingual learners, the strategies that we use in the classroom will be kind of translated into the virtual environment. Teachers know what those are and they're getting support from our team. We also have a telephonic translation service, so we can set that up at any time just by dialing a number. And the parent and a teacher can talk and have a translator on the phone with them. We use it at school all the time, and we use it now remotely. For students who have special needs that are not related services, so learning disabilities, things like that, this is one of the more granular areas of the learning plan where we're working on. We don't have any. Sorry, who just joined?
Brandy.
Hi, Brandy.
Sorry, I had to.
Randy, how you doing?
It's okay. Catch you up. So we have not gotten a complete handle on what the special ed modifications are for the learning plan, the remote learning plan, but it's a component of the work. And nobody's figured this out yet. I think the related services over the phone is going to be.
Yeah, and it looks like there's some guardrails just in what I'm looking at from an email. It has to be FERPA compliant, and there has to be both audio and visual. So there's one agency, I guess there's a recommendation to use something called Google Meet because it can do video and visual and audio. So we'll have to look into that and see what's going on.
Okay. Any other questions about these populations and these needs? Okay, we'll promise you more information as the plans take concrete shape. So these are the open questions. I mean, there are a million, but the biggest ones that we're grappling with don't have super clear answers. First off is compensation for non-staff members. We've told our staff, we're going to pay you as usual. If you are not working on Monday because we have no task for you, we'll find something for you to do, but either way, we're paying you. If you're an after-school person and you work 4 hours normally, we're going to give you 4 hours of pay, even if we don't give you 4 hours of work. Because this is like an act of God type situation to us, and we want to use our budget to support our staff. Non-staff members, there's two big categories here. There's paraprofessionals and related service providers. And we told them, sorry?
What was the second category?
Related service providers, so speech teachers, occupational therapists, stuff like that, special education. We told them we're going to support you somehow. We don't know how much or what that means, but we're going to do our best to support you and give you something. The related service question was answered this morning. They can coordinate remote sessions and bill for those. The paraprofessionals, though, is tricky. So there are 15 or so of them. They work for an agency, and they are mandated through IEPs, and they're attached, so to speak, to one student. The agency appears to have no plans to pay them. And I don't know how the agency would employ them because you can't really do a paraprofessional job as a remote, in a remote setting. So we're trying to figure this out.
Can you give us a brief description of what the paraprofessionals do?
It varies by student, but they may have what are called management needs that they can't, as a student, they can't solve on their own. Just being able to focus and stay in their seat and self-regulate. And so the paraprofessional's there to help them with their work and help them stay on track.
But it is pretty strict, even within a regular school year that's not interrupted by a virus like this, where if a child is absent and has a para, the para actually can't report.
Right.
Can't what?
Cannot report to work. They don't get paid for that day.
Okay.
Their work is entirely contingent upon having access to the child.
Okay.
So we've talked about all kinds of ideas about what we can do to both utilize this team, and some of them are highly effective and they have a lot of strong relationships. And they came up to me on Friday, some of them, and said, you know, I'm here, I'm in the neighborhood, I'm ready to do whatever. Send me out, send me wherever. We have limitations, but you know, we have a team we can activate, and we're still trying to figure out how that works in terms of payment. And as Doug pointed out, you know, in finance, even if we wanted to pay them, we don't have their records. You know, their records are at the agency, so we can't. You know, some of them actually work for the school part time. They are paras during the day, and they do after school work after school, so we can pay them. But you know, Joe Schmo para, we know their name, we have their information, we don't have their bank account number, we don't have checks. You know, we have a limited number of checks offsite and so on. So these are this complicated issue, but
Yeah.
the focus is supporting these adults who are critical supports for our kids and being fair with them and not letting them be screwed disproportionately into crisis.
And that could also include Doug, our finance director, working really closely with our special education manager and the paras to help walk them through any unemployment that they need to file.
Yeah, that might be a recourse.
Mm-hmm.
Second, hey Anthony, welcome to our board meeting. We miss you. Second open question is about childcare for staff. So,
15. We have 15 people who have children.
Do you want to explain the issue?
No, go ahead. I just wanted to give you that number because I figured it out this morning.
Okay. Most of our staff do not have kids, or they have kids who are old enough that they don't need childcare. But Margaret's reporting 15 staff members, including us, who have small kids at home and would normally have childcare or school. So what do we do about that? Because we are asking people to work. We're paying them, we want them to work. We know the work expectations are different. We know that there's going to be this complication. But that's the issue. The whole point is there's a complication. Options include people can extend babysitting on their own, and we've done that. So we have a babysitter at night or in the evening, and we have now extended her to the day, and she's able to for now. God bless her. Another option is sharing with family. So one of our APs, he and his wife are work at different organizations, and they're taking turns. Another option is there is no option, so the kids are just home. We have a staff member who's right now available during nap times, and that's it. So what are our options? Our options are the following. We could, to put it in very simple terms, we could be very lax and pay people for full-time work, understanding the situation they're in. Even if they don't have childcare, just expect them to work only the small amount of time they can. We could pay them only for the time that they're available and can demonstrate that they can work. Or we can try to provide supplementary funds for this group for extra childcare so they could focus and do more work. And the problem with that is the extra childcare might not be available. I mean, this one person I mentioned has a heart condition, so I wouldn't want to ask her to bring a stranger into her home who could be carrying the virus. So this is a really complicated thing. We need our team to function. We need our team to focus because we have a lot to do to help out with our families. We don't have any good answers on the people who have childcare. And a subset of that is other health conditions that staff members might have as well, but that's a smaller portion than the childcare hardship.
Let me add one thing. Yeah, and it's also because we're trying to figure out a general workday, particularly for our faculty who we're expecting. We didn't talk about the remote learning plan, but we are trying to do a mixture of figuring out the core subject areas for each day and laying out a learning plan for children daily that would include lesson links, but also possibly videos that they can watch of their teachers, or engaging in phone calls with their teachers, or even Zoom. So we need, and that has to be scheduled. So we need staff, particularly faculty, to have that capability to do that.
So I'd like to ask board members what your thoughts are about all that issue. I mean, there's no answer, but what are your thoughts?
Have you consulted, as I suspect you have, your opposite numbers at other schools where they're facing the same thing as any? Have you just exhausted their ideas in this rendition you gave us just a second
Not yet.
ago?
No, we haven't exhausted their ideas. We've reached out. We haven't coordinated about that. We've been focused more on the kids to this point.
No, I understand that, but I was just wondering when. Go ahead, Ken. Are you sitting outside for this event?
What?
Are you sitting outside for this event? You appear to be sitting on a roof, according to what I see here.
No, I'm sitting out on the patio in La Marque up in the mountains.
He's not practicing social distancing.
So there's no one within kilometers of me. Have you run this by, or at least presented these options to Doug, so that when we start looking at what our viability is for all of the things that are on the table, that we can have a more informed discussion about this?
Yeah, he's working on two different sets of scenarios. One is about this issue, and the other is about purchasing technology if we have to go there for kids. So he'll have a write-up of different scenarios today.
And this is going to be a breakdown of costs, I assume.
Yeah. What is the sort of will of the board? Is there a will of the board, or are we all just sort of like fumbling through this?
Well, my general feeling is that all the legal niceties and so forth aside for the second, is that we should make people as whole as we can make them. But I'm saying this without having seen the numbers, and I know we have some money that we could use, but we don't want to exhaust all of it. But I guess maybe I think I'd lean toward generosity.
I don't disagree, but I think we need to understand if Doug can forecast this out through 2 months, 4 months, will we not be up and running again until September? What will, and as we find out about funding sources in terms of is there going to be a discontinuation or a reduction of any of the revenue from the city, the state, or the federal government? I think that all of that has to be taken into account, and then weigh this against everything else that we have yet to uncover. I think we have to think about contingencies beyond technology and making people as whole as we possibly can. I wholeheartedly think that is those two are major priorities, but we really at this point don't have a lot of information about how long this is going to go or what the implications on our finances are.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
But we
I
should
also think that if we're going to make purchases for technology, we shouldn't just view it from the perspective of plugging in the gap. We should also think about using that technology for the future, so we don't kind of like, here's a crisis, no need to waste it, right? So we can move forward on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're going to have a little harder information by the end of the week. Is that correct?
Yeah.
On the money front?
Yep.
Okay.
I hope we have answers about state funding by then. My prediction is that per pupil funding will stay intact, and 50-50 on whether special education funding will stay intact. I just don't know.
Yeah.
So that means our budget is still in good shape, but it's not in as robust a shape as it was a month ago.
Yep.
It's not the stock market, but it's not the stock market from a month ago either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, 16,000, my prediction. Just saying, that's the bottom. All right. Board meetings and accountability, and also events. So I think events we can pretty much assume are going to be canceled. Anything that involved a gathering of more than 2 people. And we'll reschedule things for the fall. For board meetings, we can do remote meetings. You saw the note the governor suspended the part of the open meetings law that requires even video conference. We can do phone. So we have Brandy and Naheem on the line. I hope that you guys can hear what others are saying. And as we get
That's
better,
been taking up a lot of my time, the open meetings law.
Oh, has it?
CEC, because of CEC meetings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And all the legal stipulations around the NPEP.
Yeah. Are they rescheduling to do things more during the day? Because I think, to me, that's an issue. The day is a little bit more flexible than the evening at this point.
Right.
That's
I think right now they're just looking at what platforms are available, like whether, how we can get people to, like, for example, with joint public hearings, how people will be able to voice their commentary and, just trying to make it as aligned with in-person as possible. So. And of course, the technology, the bandwidth has been rough. Like Edward was saying before, everything keeps crashing. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, we may want to keep that and take that into account as we think about when we meet, because yesterday Zoom systems were absolutely overloaded because most businesses went to at least partial virtual, if not completely, and even with the multiple numbers, people could not get on. So think about timing. And Frank, I have to tell you, I don't know about you, Laura, but I've been busier with teleconferencing literally from 7 in the morning till 7 at night.
Oh yeah, it's
been
crazy.
unabated. Yeah,
totally crazy.
Yeah, we feel a little frantic on our end too, for sure.
Yeah, that's how I feel about working from home as well. It's like, when does it stop?
We're both Virginia and I are retirees, so we don't have the problems you're having. But we are going to have our trainer by Zoom, and we're going to take.
Oh, I love it.
I'm having my French professor by Zoom, and she's having her Spanish and her French professor by Zoom. So, and Zoom is something I didn't hear of, but I never heard of until about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, we used it last semester in school, Zoom.
I like it. I like seeing all y'all lovely faces on my screen right now.
We do it for our 45-member board 6 times a year, and it works remarkable. It really does.
Does the screen have 45 little
This
pictures?
is one of the platforms where you were worth considering. So.
Yeah. Do people have a preference about when we meet? You want to try to keep the same schedule, or are you flexible? Because I know my preference would be to move things to the daytime. The evenings are going to get even harder with childcare.
You mean our board meeting?
Yeah, the rest of the board meetings for the year.
I think
if I can jump in, like a half an hour earlier would be great. With the work from home, people are realizing that no one has a commute, so everything's starting earlier. So if we could start at 8:30 for meetings and things like that, that would be perfect for me at least.
So have our meetings move to the morning, earlier the better.
Anybody else?
That I agree. Or if we're going to do in the morning, like first thing.
First thing. Okay. First thing for me is 7, but 8:30 is good. Okay. Accountability is the last open question. We just don't know, and no one knows. So we're in touch with the authorizer. We were even wondering, will we get an extra year in the charter? Because will there be no tests? But all these questions are pie in the sky, and we'll find out more as the situation develops. Okay, so with that, we've come to the resolution portion of our meeting, which is a little less relevant now because the governor has ordered all schools to close for 2 weeks. But we do want to have a resolution on file.
City schools are closed until April 20th. So is that all?
Well, April 20th, right?
When you say all city schools, the DOE is closed for
Until after spring break.
So
no, charters actually have until the governor spoke, charters were allowed to still be open even if the city closed schools. So I'm going to read the resolution here. We can obviously change it however we want. It's just very simple. Resolve that Harlem Link Charter School is closed for on-site instruction effective March 16, 2020 to reopen no earlier than April 20. April 20 is the day the DOE plans to open tentatively, and it's also the day after the planned spring break. So it was already after a break. I'd like to hear if we have any changes we want to make to that, but also if anybody wants to add something about what we're trying to achieve with our remote learning plan. And I don't mind having a little time to discuss that and get some language, because it would be helpful for our staff to hear the board say that as well.
Would you read it again, Steve, please?
Resolve that Harlem Link Charter School is closed for on-site instruction effective March 16, 2020 to reopen no earlier than April 20, 2020.
So you want a subsequent sentence that says something more eloquent than I'm going to say here, but in the interim, we shall focus on providing the best education we can by remote learning, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So let's see, throughout the duration of this period, I think the rule of 3, we should try to say 3 things that we want to accomplish. We want to provide a caring support network for our families and kids. We want to provide a virtual learning environment to the extent possible. And we want to provide supports for any vulnerable populations. I think those are the 3 things. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
So virtual
sounds
to the extent learning environment to an extent possible.
Throughout the duration of this period, the school will make every effort to provide a network of care for all students and families. I say staff, students, and families. Alumni in there too. Alumni, staff, students, and families. A virtual learning environment that replicates as much of the regular school day as possible. And supports for vulnerable students and families.
Steve, I would add a caveat that the board recognizes the extraordinary effort that faculty and staff are undertaking during this difficult time.
Agreed.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. Read it one more time. Resolve the Harlem Link Charter School is closed for on-site instruction effective March 16, 2020 to reopen no earlier than April 20th, 2020. Throughout the duration of this period, the school will make every effort to provide a network of care for all alumni, staff, students, and families.
I would not put alumni first there. Either put them in alphabetical order, which would put alumni first, or do it students first, staff, blah, 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 blah.
Students, families, alumni,
Students,
staff.
families.
Students, families, alumni, and staff.
No, put staff ahead of alumni too.
Students,
Yeah.
family, staff. Hey, wait till they graduate, Monica. You won't be saying that. Students,
I know, right?
staff, and alumni. Okay. Students, families, staff, and alumni, semicolon. A virtual learning environment that replicates as much of the regular school day as possible, semicolon. And supports for vulnerable students and families. The board recognizes the extraordinary effort the faculty and staff are undertaking at this time. Instead of virtual, we should say remote learning because that's the language we're using.
Okay.
Who's that?
Okay, is there a motion to approve this?
I so move.
I second.
Any objections? It's carried.
Terrific. Okay, hey Voika, we haven't heard from you. Do you have any comments, questions?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, good morning, everyone. No, I apologize, but I missed about 8 minutes in the beginning and about 5 or 6 minutes in between.
Oh, those are the best
because my
parts.
son is setting up remote learning, and so that it's been a funny little adventure. And then I apologize for no video, but I was afraid that because I run a railroad station, someone might walk past in their underwear or something. So,
Hey, we need some of that.
but no, I think so far so good. You've touched on everything. It seems like it's going as best as it can, and you're planning ahead. So I think you're in a good position right now.
Okay, thank you.
Boyka, when did you get back?
I got back about 7 days ago.
Well, I'm glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm self-isolating.
Sorry. Should we schedule a meet? We have a scheduled meeting next Tuesday. Should we go for an 8:30 next Tuesday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sounds good to me.
All right, let's do it. So
Okay.
do that. You'll get the Outlook and all that. We can try Zoom again. I think this worked out pretty well.
Okay, Steve, I think we're all very eager to see whatever Doug generates. Don't hold that back for the board meeting. Make sure. I think you should set to all the board meetings, obviously special emphasis on the financial people. But anyhow, and any significant variation on what you've told us today that occurs, please let us all know.
You got it. We will do.
And
Thank
then
you.
as things unfold, just on the DOE side with regards to Wi-Fi, instruction, meals, I'll be sure to pass that on.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And Steve, Pete, Edward, I think we have a executive committee meeting Wednesday, tomorrow or Thursday?
Oh, is that tomorrow?
Thursday.
Thursday,
Yeah.
Why don't we do that, Steve? The same thing, 8:30?
Actually, we better if we could do the regular time for us for that one. Is that all right?
Okay,
10?
fair enough.
We keep that?
Okay. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you all.
With that, thank you, everybody, and we'll be reporting out.
Godspeed,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good work.
Thanks.
Good work,
Well.
guys.
Bye,
Good
everybody.
work.
Bye, everyone.
Wash your hands.
Just my clapping.
Bye, Morgan. I saw you briefly.
Clap, clap, clap.
Bye, Anthony.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Be well. Social distancing.
Tell these people here.